Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Clarisse Fortuné and here are the stories making headlines across the continent. Standoff continues between hundreds of illegal miners and police in South Africa after wanting to, I quote, to smoke them out. The government says it's now planning a professional rescue. It was the only thing left of Patrice Lumumba, but now DRC national hero's tooth is missing. His mausoleum was vandalized in Kinshasa. And they'll meet again next year in Morocco. We now know which teams have been qualified for AFCON 2025, and we will tell you all about it later in this program. But first to South Africa, where hundreds of illegal miners known as Zama-Zamas are still trapped in dire conditions in Stilfontein mine. Police operations had until recently blocked food and water supplies, leaving miners to starve and some critically ill. But now the government says it's now planning a professional rescue operation. France 24's Eunice Masson has been following the story, and she's joining us live from Cape Town. Thank you very much, Eunice, to join us. Can you please tell us what's the latest?
Yes, sure. Good evening. We know that an official rescue team arrived at the abandoned gold mine this morning, and a team of experts will first assess the situation, which might take up to 5 or 6 days before the actual start assisting the miners to resurface. It's understood that they will use like a cage-like system to help carry the miners to the surface. And meanwhile, we must add that an interim court order now ruled that the miners must be supplied with medications such as antiretrovirals, and also that only emergency personnel are allowed to go down into the mine. The police welcomed this order and also added that it does not prevent them from carrying out their constitutional mandate. So far, more than 1,100 of the illegal miners have resurfaced, after which they were medically assessed and then arrested. It is important to note that these illegal miners in Stilfontein specifically are not trapped underground, but rather refuse to resurface to evade possible arrest. So similar clampdowns on illegal mining have occurred across South Africa in what is termed Operation Vala Ngudi. And so the miners can exit the mine, but at this point choose not to.
So we are going to smoke them out. So that was Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, government minister, words last Wednesday. So what about President Eunice? What about President Cyril Ramaphosa? Any reaction at all?
Yeah, so they moved away from this smoke out, and the police minister has been very clear about this, that they are there to really get the miners out in a humane manner. And again, from the standpoint that these illegal miners are not trapped, President Ramaphosa reiterated that the events unfolding at the abandoned gold mine is a crime scene. He mentioned that it's a crime scene where the offense of illegal mining is being committed. So he did, however, called upon all stakeholders to resolve the matter peacefully and safely while still upholding the rule of law.
Thank you very much, Eunice Masson, live from Cape Town. She's been following the story for us. Thank you very much. Now, Iro is to become Somaliland's 6th president since the country broke away from Somalia in 1991. The opposition leader of the self-declared republic, Abdirahman Mohamed Abdullahi, has won the presidential election with 64% of the vote. And during campaigning, Iro said his party would review a controversial deal to lease landlocked Ethiopia, a 20-kilometer section of its coastline, for 50 years to set up a naval base, an agreement that has caused a diplomatic feud in the region.
The National Electoral Commission officially declares that the Wadani party came first and won the temporary voting results. The Ka party came second, and finally, the Kulmiye party came third.
Now to Ivory Coast, a case of alleged police violence is causing a diplomatic stir. Guinean street vendors say they were assaulted in a building belonging to local authorities. And despite the district's denial, the Guinean ambassador wants the Ivorian authorities to investigate. Julia Guggenheim and Tom Kennedy.
Irene and Gérard came to hear these street vendors from Guinea. They're from the Aba Afrique Association, which helps women and children who are victims of violence. These women say they were kidnapped and beaten by the Urban Disorder Brigade, not far from the Kumasi police station.
They come and lock you up until 7 p.m. and if they've had 10 or 13 people, they tell you to go out. They say that everyone has to get down because they're going to start beating people. It was with a leash. The leash that's on a dog's neck. Yes, and there was this big man who hit us with the bottom of an umbrella, the metal part.
They came with the handle of a wooden hammer, the way the man hit me. And when they'd finished hitting me, he said, "You have to undress them," and they took my photo.
The Urban Disorder Brigade was created in July by the district of Abidjan. At the time, we had caught on camera its heavy-handed methods of cleaning up the city by preventing beggars and street traders from occupying public spaces. In a statement, the district assured us that after verification, these accusations did not concern its men. It also claimed that unknown people were posing as its agents.
What I know is that on several occasions, several women have been stopped by individuals in patrol vehicles and taken to the same place. These are not isolated individuals. They belong to a well-organized structure that can be traced, located and identified.
The case came to light after Véronique, another street vendor from Guinea, gave evidence. A video showing her serious injuries recently circulated on social media. 6 women have now lodged complaints. The investigation, which will have to determine whether these torturers were in fact police officers, is still underway.
Patrice Lumumba was one of DR Congo's national heroes. A mausoleum containing his tooth has been ransacked. That tooth is all that remains of the murdered politician, and it was returned to Congo from Belgium in 2022. But now, his current whereabouts are known. Emmett Livingstone in Kinshasa has more.
On Sunday evening, a mausoleum containing the last remains of Patrice Lumumba was smashed by vandals in circumstances that remain unclear. On Tuesday, the police was on site carrying out investigations, but would not let journalists near the site. Patrice Lumumba is a towering symbol of anti-colonial resistance in DR Congo, and the tooth is all that remains of his body after he was murdered in 1961. Congo's Culture Ministry issued a statement saying that the situation is under control, but without mentioning the location of the tooth. A source close to the family said that the tooth hadn't been held in the mausoleum for several months due to security reasons.
We
realized that the place had been ransacked and the coffin put on the ground. I'm convinced that the investigation will go further to determine the authors and co-authors of these acts, which sought to desecrate the mausoleum of Patrice Emery Lumumba.
Lumumba was Congo's first prime minister after independence from Belgium in 1960, but he only held the position for several months before he was toppled. In 1961, with the tacit backing of Western powers, he was shot dead and dissolved in acid. A policeman tasked with disposing of the body took one of Lumumba's teeth as a trophy. This relic was at last returned to Congo in 2022 during a visit from the Belgian king. It was then laid to rest in a mausoleum in the capital, Kinshasa. The recent smashing of this mausoleum might weaken Congo's demand for the restitution of cultural artifacts held in foreign museums. Many experts fear that the country is too poor and too badly managed for restitution to take place.
And now to sports. The tickets for next year's Africa Cup of Nations have been booked. Destination Morocco, when? December 2025. And James Fassina, our sport correspondent, he's hoping to be there. James, who else is going?
Well, look, we've got the big teams, the big African football teams who are there. For many of them, you've got the likes of Senegal, you've got the likes of Nigeria, you've got, of course, the defending champions, Ivory Coast, the hosts, Morocco, Egypt. those big teams, for a lot of them, are going to be there. But there are some surprises as well, some smaller teams who we haven't seen for a very long time. I'm thinking of the like of Comoros, I'm thinking of the likes of Sudan, Mozambique. And if we take a look at some of the scores that have come in today, a lot of this has all been decided in these very last minutes. A testimony to how tight it has been. As you can see there, Botswana managed to make it through with a draw against Egypt. They would have been very worried because they opened up the score. Trezeguet for Egypt drew level, but that was enough with 1 point there for them to be able to make it through to the finals stage of the Africa Cup of Nations. First time in 12 years now, by the time it starts in the end of 2025. It would have been 13 years since Botswana were there. So I think this is all very a testimony indeed of how tight it has been, and just the level in African football has really heightened somewhat for it to all come down to these very last days of the qualifications, for it to all happen just there. You did see a last match coming on there by Senegal, still happening right now. Nothing up for stakes in that game still to come. But that will be it afterwards for all of the qualifiers. Now, I mentioned Sudan. Sudan obviously very particular considering the atmosphere, well, the situation, of course, that the country is in. But we've heard from the manager of Sudan, and let's just take a listen to what he had to say after they secured their qualification. That was yesterday night.
Since we started the competition, it's been really difficult because of the war in Sudan. So I decided that since there's no league as well in Sudan, I need to make sure I pick some players from Hilal and Merrick. So it's been really difficult because our home matches are being played either in Libya, Mauritania, South Sudan.
Now, we've talked about those who will be there. We haven't talked about those who won't be there. One of the big upsets has been for Ghana, the Black Stars. 20 years pretty much since they will have in the last 20 years, they have participated in every Africa Cup of Nations, will not be there this time around. Guinea as well, who were so good in Ivory Coast. They reached the quarterfinals, of course, last time around. Same thing, upset for them, do not get through. And again, I think this has all just shown how tight it has been for them. But that is those are the 24 teams that we can expect to see play in Morocco, as you mentioned, Clarice, at the end of 2025. Why? Once again, the Africa Cup of Nations has been pushed back, this time due to other international duties. So it'll be happening between December 2025 and January coming up after that. And we'll, of course, be following all of that over in Morocco.
And James, my passport is up to date, so I'll go with you. Thank you very much. And this concludes our edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to France 24.